Hello everyone and welcome back. Now that I have the oven, let's test out the powder coater. So yes, hello everyone, and thank you very much for joining me once again. Now, as a carry on from building this oven, I want to test the powder coater, and I want to see if this oven is actually going to get up to temperature and do the job. If not, then it's kind of back to the drawing board, and I might have to add additional elements. The only problem with having to add additional elements, I'm really going to have to think about how I'm meant to be cabling this installation. So as I said in the last one, a cooker, a normal cooker, would have its own separate ring main, its own separate dedicated supply from your distribution board where all the electrics come from, and it would normally be fed by about a 6mm cable, and it would literally just be going to that oven. So at the minute I'm only using 2.5mm flex, which I really need to up that. The only problem is the actual supply for the plug socket itself is probably only about 2.5 as well. So even if I upped the cable to the oven, the actual supply to the plug socket itself is only going to be about that as well. So what I've been doing is I've been checking the plug to make sure it's not getting too hot, make sure that the cable's not getting too hot, make sure the current isn't causing too much heat. And so far so good. However, like I said, if the oven doesn't actually get up to temperature, then it's back to the drawing board, and I'm going to have to rethink how I'm going to wire this up and add additional elements. Okay, so whilst waiting for the oven to heat up, what I thought we'd do is play around with the powder coating system itself. Now, I did just try out the gun to see if I could control the flow, and it went absolutely everywhere, as I'm sure you can probably see. So what I've done is I have attached a pressure adjuster there, and a pressure adjuster right at the compressor as well, and I've seemed to have got it down. Now, what I also didn't realise was there's a screw here, which appears to adjust the flow of powder. That was screwed right out, so it literally just plumed everywhere. It was insane. So I've adjusted that, I've adjusted this right down, and now I've also not filled this container up a lot. And I don't know if you can just about see that, but there is some powder coming out. Again, I might need to fill this up a little bit more now anyway, but I've definitely got a better control of the flow. Now I've plugged it all in, and I'm just going to grab one of the parts and we'll give it a test out now. Okay, so the part I'm going to be testing is this. And basically, all this was a spreader plate for the weights in the Clio, the ballast. I had this placed in the passenger footwell, and these are the spreader plates that you use underneath the car. Now, something like this probably would have been absolutely primed to be powder coated because it was just seeing all the grit, all the grime and everything from the racetrack. So, I'm just going to give this a test and see how well this covers on here. Now, I've just gone with a wire wheel and I've cleaned it all up. So, and I've also used some degreaser, so it's now completely clean. Let's give it a blast. Okay, so that is the powder coated part. I did accidentally touch my finger on it, so you can probably just see a slight indentation there. But again, because this is a test, I actually want to see how absolutely precise you need to be. Now, we need to see if the oven's going to be hot enough. Okay, so the powder coating oven has now been on for an hour. What I've also done, when I turn this on, I hung up another one of those spreader plates inside. For two reasons. One, I wanted to see the two different types of powder coating. So one of them is called hot flocking. So that is where you heat the part up first, then you give it a blast with the powder coater, and it starts to already cure as it's laying. So I'm not sure if that's going to give a better result. I've seen it done. It does look better. You've also got less risk of knocking off the powder, damaging your coat like I did with my finger earlier. So I'm going to open this up now and I'm going to test the temperature and then we'll go from there. So I'm hoping that that part is now starting to be near where we're at. I mean, it feels really warm in here, but the part itself, it's just dropping. It was at 70 degrees and it's just now dropped to about 60 odd with the door open. Don't know what to do now. both heating elements have turned up to the max. They should be 200 and... The bottom one should be about 240 and the top one should be at 220. So I don't really know what to do next, if I'm honest. Okay, so I've had the oven on for about nearly 2 hours now. Admittedly, I have opened the door a few times to see if it's getting up to temperature, but the most I could get the part up to temperature was 90 degrees. After it sort of hit 90 degrees, it just plateaued at 90. Now, it made me think, have I done something wrong? And I think I might have. So, on the back of the oven, the original oven that I took all these pieces out of, they have these little I think these are temperature switches. So these were screwed on the back panel of the oven, but the thing is, they were screwed onto the second back panel. So there's the back panel where, then there's the external back panel. That's where these were screwed onto. So I think what happens is these see if the oven or the outer shell of the oven's getting too hot, then it'll turn the elements off and let it cool down. Because I could hear a click and then the elements would turn off and it wouldn't be hot. And I think that's what it is, because I had this screwed on the actual back panel. Now, even now, that back panel is really hot and I can't touch it. So no wonder, if that's what this is, no wonder the elements were turning off, because obviously it was just getting too hot. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to place it on this actual back panel here, because I mean this wasn't getting hot at all, and obviously that would be the outer panel on the original oven. So I'm going to get that screwed on there, I'm going to make sure all the insulation and everything's all back together, then we're going to turn it on and then we're going to go and see if that's then going to cure the heating up issue. Because like I said, the elements were working, but they would just click off too early and then they wouldn't heat back up until, I'm guessing, everything's cooled down a bit, obviously because of this reading its temperature. So I'm going to get that screwed onto that back panel and we'll give it another go. Okay, so while the powder coating oven is doing its thing and heating up and getting to temperature and stuff, I thought we would just give it a little bit of a rundown of how much this thing exactly cost. So I got a lot of the bits and pieces from Travis Perkins. I got the C-stud wall section from Travis Perkins. I got the insulation from Travis Perkins. There's only two things that I really didn't get from Travis Perkins, and that was the sheet metal and the actual original oven that I took apart and stole all the bits from. So I managed to find a second-hand oven for £50. Now, like I say, I got fairly lucky because this is a double oven unit, which means that hopefully I'll be able to have both elements running at full temperature, and they'll be acting as if they're two different ovens, but obviously they'll just be contributing to the same heat. Again, you'd probably get away with using an oven grill because it probably just does exactly the same thing. You'd still have the same size element at the bottom, and you'd still be able to utilise the fan assist in the middle. So with the C-stud wall sections, they are £23 for 3 lengths, basically. So £24 for every 3 lengths. I used 12 of them. Okay, with the insulation, I actually used 2 different types. This was 100mm thick, and that was £25 for the pack. However, I know full well the other thickness I actually bought from eBay, and it was slightly thicker, but it cost me the same. I had to buy 2 packs of insulation to cover this massive unit, so it cost me £60 in insulation. I bought 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. I bought 10 sheets of 2 metre by 1 metre sheet metal from themetalstore.com. It was pricey. It cost me about £480 including delivery. However, again, the oven probably stands me at about £600 total. If you were to try and buy a powder coating oven at this size, you're talking £1,500 plus VAT. So if you really want to get into powder coating bits and pieces, or you're a hobbyist like me, and again, if you were to send off 10 parts to be powder coated by a company, it's probably going to cost you £100, £150 a time. So you just got to weigh up how many items you're going to get sent to get powder coated, and whether this will actually recover any of your own cost. For me, I think it will, because now that I've got it, I had the powder coating system. Again, the powder coating system is about £120 on eBay, £100 on eBay, something like that. I can't remember. I did buy it 2 years ago, or a year ago now. So again, you've just got to weigh up the options to see if it's actually going to be cost effective for you. However, for me, like I said, going forward, I'm now going to have the powder coaters here. The powders themselves are actually quite cheap. I think it's about £15 for a kilogram. I've got some coming, so again, once they're here, we'll have another test. Hopefully we'll get this oven sorted and then we'll be able to test out some parts, hopefully the MR2 parts. So we'll go from there. But that's just a rough idea of cost. Like I say, I'm pretty sure that this thing has cost me a total of £600. Obviously you've got consumables like the hinges and the clasps and the screws. Again, I got all them sort of bits and pieces from Amazon. The door seal, again, Amazon. I'll put a link in the description below of, you know, some of these screws and hinges and stuff that I've used. If you want to use them yourself, then obviously you can just head straight there. However, there you go, that's a rough estimate of how much this has cost me. I'll probably do a final calculation and I might put it in the description below. But just as a rough figure, about £600. Okay, so it turns out that definitely was a temperature sensor switch and it's now working. The heating element has now been on for a good hour and 20 minutes. Now the only problem is the bottom two elements have got exactly the same issue. So as this oven is heating up, I have use of both. But as soon as that bottom piece of metal starts to get hot, it then cuts out the bottom elements. So for the last sort of hour and 15 minutes, I've literally just been running on that middle, that top heating element and fan assist oven element there. So it's taken a long time to heat up, and I think once I swap that other temperature sensor switch round onto the other back piece of the metal, I think we'll be good to go. I mean, like I say, it's now been about an hour and 20 minutes or so, and the last time I checked about 10-15 minutes ago, the parts are up to about 155 degrees, 160 degrees. So I think once that bottom element is running full time, then we'll easily get this thing up to 180 degrees, probably within half an hour, 45 minutes, because when they were both on, the temperature in there was absolutely insane. So I think those parts would heat up a lot quicker. So unfortunately, this will only be a half test today. However, at least I know where the error has come in. However, like I say, even though it's only at about 160 degrees, or the parts are at 160 degrees, it looks as though the powder cone has actually flowed out and has turned glossy. So I'm going to give it another 10 minutes or so. So it's been on for about an hour and a half. We'll pull them out, we'll have a look. Okay, so the oven had been on for about an hour and a half. I've just pulled the parts out. Do you know what? As a first test, I'm pretty pleased with how it's turned out. Yes, they're not perfect. Yes, I've got some teething issues with the oven, but this is exactly why I wanted to do this test. I knew that everything wasn't going to go smoothly 100% on my first attempt. However, now I know how to fix the oven, going forward it's going to be a lot better. However, let's take a little closer look at these parts. They're not perfect. So if we have a look at this side here, you can just about see in the light there's some orange peel. Now, I'm 100% putting that down to the fact that the oven didn't get up to 180 degrees and this flowed out about 150. And if we look on the back, just see this section here, the coverage was quite poor. So again, I just need to make sure that when I'm covering parts, I really need to have a good look over, probably with a torch, and just check out the coverage. Now the second part is better and worse at the same time. So the outer section is really, really nice. Obviously this here was where I knocked it before I put it in the oven. And the coverage itself is really, really good on the front. Again, we've still got the orange peel, but again, I'm putting that down to the fact that it wasn't up to 180 degrees. However, the back coverage is absolutely terrible. So again, before I put stuff in the oven, I really need to check coverage. However, like I say, as a first test, on just a couple of bits of metal, that I would have happily put these on the Clio, because these were just on the underside of the car, holding down the ballast or holding down the weight. So this was just seeing all the road grit, grime, everything from being towed to the track whilst being on track. Obviously that gearbox issue I had put fluid everywhere. These were covered in gearbox oil and they were starting to rust quite badly. So again, if I'd have just powder coated them, even roughly like this, would have saved this metal from rusting up. Now, I did do one other test whilst the oven was heating up, and that's this. This is a bottom pulley off the Clio. Still quite warm. Now, the reason why I did this test was because I have a shot blaster over there. I'm still waiting for the shot blast media to turn up. Something like this, I would have used the shot blaster on, but I thought to myself, would I actually need it? Could I get away with just using a wire brush or a wire wheel? So that's exactly what I did. I used the wire wheel on the back, and do you know what? I actually got quite a good finish on the back. So again, the coverage, pretty good. Maybe just lacking in a few spots there. But again, I'd have been more than happy putting that part on the Clio. Now, one thing I would have definitely done is use some heat-proof tape and covered these ribs here, because when you put the powder coat on, it actually changes the thickness. Obviously, you're adding a layer of something, so it would have changed the thickness of these ribs, which means that the belt probably wouldn't have sat on there correctly. So I'd have just got some heat-proof tape and completely covered the ribs. Now again, with the front, I paid even less attention to, because again, I just wanted to see what sort of finish would have happened. And again, not horrendous. If I would have actually cleaned up these little crevices here, where obviously when I use the wire wheel, all the dust and stuff sat in, I think this would have actually been a pretty good part. And again, I would have been more than happy to put that on the Clio. So again, I mean, as this was just a test, it's fine. I wouldn't have actually put this on the Clio. Basically, this pulley in particular has a rubber band in the centre, which acts like a vibration dampener, stops the vibrations. So this would not have been okay going on a car after I powder coated it, because the problem is rubber doesn't like to be hot, doesn't like to be heated up, especially at 180 degrees. You would have actually started to break down the rubber at a molecular level. So this probably would have now been no good. However, something on the MR2, a bottom pulley like this, isn't dampened. So I'll probably whip that off and get that powder coat. That's not a problem at all. So just be careful if you wanted to do stuff like this. Just be careful with rubber parts and bits like this, because I mean, you might not even necessarily know that that is a rubber band inside, but it is. So therefore, you could have compromised the actual part's integrity. So that is all for this week. I am really happy with the test results. Well, I'm mixed about the test results, because obviously we've had some teething issues with the oven, but again, this is exactly why I wanted to get this done. I wanted to get this tested out, I wanted to see if this worked. Obviously we know it will work, it half works now, and obviously I just need to practice a little bit more with my actual powder coating skills. So until then, thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.